Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Best Year of Your Life Summit. My name is Alexis Moore, and I am your co host today. I am here with Derek Rydell, and I am very excited to be able to chat with Derek today. I got to chat with him for another summit, and it was just an awesome conversation. So, let me tell you a little bit about him. Derek is a transformational leader, a best-selling author, and spiritual guide. For 2 decades, he's empowered hundreds of thousands worldwide to evolve amidst our changing world. Through personal trials, including loss and near-death experiences, he's unearthed principles of healing and growth. His books, Emergence and The Abundance Project, unlock innate potential. With a thriving community, he's fostering a global movement towards personal growth and social change. So, Derek, so lovely to be here with you today. Welcome. And today we get to talk about financial health and abundance.
Awesome. Which is almost never really about wealth is almost never really about wealth. I'm sure we're going to get into that, but yes.
Yeah. We will absolutely get into that. I have got a chance to read some of the Abundance Project, so I'm excited to get into those principles that you share in the book today with you. Before we go there, just to start off, would you share a little bit about your own experience around abundance and financial health and what really brought you to write the book, The Abundance Project?
Yeah, well, I actually had many experiences growing up where, we had a lot of abundance, and then my parents got divorced, and then I ended up living in a garage with my mom and my sister at one point, literally in a little room in a friend's garage, me and my mom, my sister, one little room. Actually, I've kind of blocked it out now that I think about it. It was pretty intense for a while. And then, we got ourselves back on our feet, and then we lost our house, and then we got another house. And then my mom went through another experience, and then we lost that house too. And I ended up living under the stairs of a friend's house, a friend's apartment, living under the stairs, kind of like Harry Potter or something, with my little box of stuff. That was my whole life was in a box next to me under the stairs. So I went through many of these experiences of having and then losing it all, having and losing it all. And throughout my whole life, I've actually had many of those in different ways. But I remember there was a commitment I made. But there was 2 commitments. One, when I was growing up and my dad was successful, I felt like it was hurting us and hurting our family. And I had a resentment towards wealth and success. And I was like, I'm never going to be like that. I was the artist and the creative and heart-centered and all that. And then when I ended up living in a garage with my mom and my sister, I was like, I'm never going to be like that. So it set up an interesting dynamic that we may talk about, which is a values conflict, where I wanted both things. I wanted to live in my heart, and I wanted to live authentically, and I wanted to be who I really was. But I also wanted to do it in a way that was abundant and successful and sustainable. And I didn't have a model for that. It was either shut down those more heart-centered, creative, spiritual sides of me in order to be more like my dad, at least as I perceived him then, and pursue financial abundance at the cost of that, or it was sacrifice abundance and basically live paycheck to paycheck, or even worse, in a garage or under the stairs. So that was where it started the stirring that there has to be a way to live authentically and sustainably and abundantly. But what really shifted things was, I might have talked about this when we talked before, and I'll just say briefly, is it set me on a course of personal development and self-improvement. I had to figure out a way to improve myself enough. And my journey of self-improvement with many years, actually the only thing that led to me improving was my ability to describe why my life was so screwed up, right? I could describe all the things that happened, like those examples, and tell you what it did to me and why I have these beliefs. But my life was still not really improving. In fact, I became so frustrated that I became addicted to drugs and alcohol. I almost died of an overdose. And then I ultimately had a second near-death experience while I was doing a film in Jamaica. And in this experience, I almost drowned. I was stuck in a coral reef, and nobody knew I was out there, and there was no way to get out. And there was a moment where I knew I was surrounded by fire coral and giant spiked coral underneath me. I couldn't lift my head out of the water. I would have been skewered alive. It was a very, very dangerous and scary situation. But there was a moment where I knew I wasn't going to survive. And it's hard to explain that if you have never been. It's not like I hope I make it. This is really bad. It was, I'm done. I'm exhausted. I can't get out. I'm going to drown. And all that was left for me was a moment of unconditional surrender to my idea of a God, which was very slim and bitter and very ambivalent at best. But I just surrendered. I let go. And in that moment, there was a flash of light. And I saw a vision that the self I'd been trying to fix, change, heal, and improve was a figment of my imagination, an amalgamation of parental fantasies, societal conditioning, peer pressure. He was a fiction, and nothing I could ever do would ever make him enough. But simultaneously, I saw there was another self. And this self had not been damaged by all these experiences. This self, therefore, did not need to be fixed or healed. And this self was already whole and complete. And so this self could not be improved upon. It was an oxymoron. Self-improvement was an oxymoron. There was no such self that needed to be improved. It was just a flash, but it felt like it lasted. I'm getting chills even as I remember it. And in the next moment, I was standing outside the coral reef. Somehow I'd gotten out and I was standing on top of some coral looking in, and I saw the maze of coral, and it was a metaphor for my life that I'd been swimming through this maze, this labyrinth, following all these brightly colored objects, trying to escape something, escape the world above. And I was actually drowning and gasping for my life. And I'd been doing that for most of my life. But now I was literally in that experience in 3D. And everything had this luminosity to it. And I knew something dramatically had happened. Humpty Dumpty had fallen off the wall, and there would be no putting him back together again. I was able to dive off the other side and swim out, so I got free. But it so radically shifted me. I pulled out of society, and I became a monk. And I was literally in a monastery for a while. Did not go well. I think we talked about this, but I was fasting and silent and freaking out basically. And I broke into the monk's kitchen in the middle of the night and would steal food out of their sub-zero refrigerator. Had my first out of body experience, and I was just freaking out. And I pretty much ran screaming from the monastery. But I stayed in this monk life for several years. And what I discovered was I was wanting to figure out what had happened to me. I was so shifted. Something had been broken inside of me. I couldn't return to the world as I knew it. But I knew that I was meant to be in the world. And through this journey, this long journey, I discovered that this vision of the self that I had seen, it was akin to the idea that within every seed, there is already a perfect pattern. The acorn already has the oak tree. The apple seed already has the apple tree. Not only does it have an apple tree, it has orchards and orchards and orchards of apple trees. In one seed is literally infinity. And so there's the first idea about abundance. Abundance is not material because there's not enough room in that little apple seed for billions of apple trees or apples and apple pies and all that. How does that come out of that little apple seed? And we'll get to that. But I saw that there was a perfect pattern in every seed and the mechanics for its fulfillment. When the conditions were congruent with that seed pattern, its purpose emerged. And I saw that the same is true for us, because there was a seed planted in the soil of our soul even before we were planted in our mother's womb. And that seed is not a product of this world. So it's not a fiction. It's not a product of our merely our parents' fantasies of what we should be or what our friends think we should be or what the society says. It's something that is innate to us. It cannot be destroyed or diminished by the world, but it also cannot be improved of, and the world can't make it happen. It's up to us to come into integrity with it, to come into alignment with it. And when we do, and as we do, our life will begin to flower and to flourish and to bear fruit richly. And that's exactly what happened to me. I went from being suicidal, living in a one-room apartment, broke and broken, to ultimately within a year, my life beginning to flourish. And within a few years, I moved into my dream home. I had a dream business. I was in love. I had the life of my dreams, and very soon became financially free, many decades before I ever thought I would, and was able to grow my business much, much faster than all the experts that told me I never could do it. All of this from this initial insight and the practices that I learned. So that's really the foundation. And I ended up coining this term, the law of emergence, which is again the idea that within every seed is the perfect pattern of its fulfillment. And when the conditions are congruent, it emerges. And that's what I want people to understand. That is the first most essential principle, not just for an abundant life, but to live the life you were really created to live, and in every area to have abundance.
I mean, I'm just taking that in. Derek. I mean, because when you said that you got the chills, even just telling your story of your near-death experience, that story has stayed with me since the last time I talked to you. I think about that story that you shared. And when you were describing your childhood and these different ideas that you took from it, with your father and the success, and like, I have to shut down in order to have it. And then, if I'm being, if I'm being creative and maybe authentic, then that means that I'm not going to have stability. So it's, the word that arose was confusion, and it's so confusing. And then, this journey gets prompted to just basically figure out the confusion and try to figure out the right thing to do. But yeah,
confusion is actually a high state on the spiritual path. Confusion, to be confused, it means that there are two seemingly disparate ideas that are trying to come together to be fused. Confused means with fusion. It means it's a conflict of two seemingly different ideas that are bumping up against each other, but there's a third higher idea. There's again an emergent property that's trying to happen. So there's the idea of you can't succeed unless you sell out or conform to the world or do, what the man wants or whatever the thing is. And the idea is that you can't succeed authentically, etc. And the idea that if you want to be who you really are, you got to be like Van Gogh and be a starving artist that goes crazy and cuts off your ear or whatever. If you want to be authentic, you got to be broke or poor and not join the bourgeoisie or whatever. All these ideas, right? The broke artist, the starving artist, or just if you're authentic and loving, you're going to be taken advantage of. All these conflicting ideas. But what it did was it created the conditions, because my commitment was to know the truth and to live the truth in service of a higher possibility, whatever it took. And as a result, that created like the chemical catalyst. I had to figure out what was the answer. I knew innately that these were just two sides of the picture. One was the masculine, one was the feminine, right? One was left brain, one was right brain. It was the yin and the yang. It was like, you either have to be all about structure and control and dominance and the world as we see it, or you have to be more, the more feminine, heart-centered, et cetera, et cetera. And the artist without any structure and without any. And so it brought me up against what appeared to be opposites. but were really two sides of me that needed to be integrated. And that has been the journey of discovering what is that integrated version of that. And so that I basically began to realize that, as I said earlier, it's what's called a values conflict. So we all have versions of this within us. We have things we value, like I want to, I want to be, like I said, I want to be successful and abundant. But we also value, I want to have family, or I want to have a good relationship, or I want to have good health, or I want to have enough time alone or free to do my inner work, whatever. And in our experience, we got the message that one or the other, but not both. And so we got wired in our nervous system, in our neural pathways, and in our mind to believe these were separate things. And many people just acquiesce and give up on one side of the equation. Mm. And some people stay in a constant struggle so that they'll push for a while towards one, and then they'll feel anxious or scared, or they'll hit a threshold. They'll take their foot off the gas, and then they'll move towards the other one. Mm. And then they'll get anxious, or they'll hit a threshold, and then they'll let go of that and they'll move towards it. And it becomes this yo-yo experience of just starting to make it. And then, oh, well, I don't really need that after all. That's not really what I care about. What I really care about is this. And they just start to deepen that. And, and that's one of the signs you're in one of these values conflicts. But what I do is I help people create a values affirmation where you weave those back together. So this happened to me in my 20s, just before I had this. Was it before? Yeah, it was just around the same time before I had this, the real breakthrough around abundance specifically, not the near-death experience. It was after that. But I realized that these two values were like sibling rivalry. They were a part of my family. They were a part of my consciousness. And I created a values affirmation that said something like, instead of I either have to sacrifice success to have spirituality and creativity and be an artist and be authentic, or I have to sacrifice that to be successful, what arose in me was the more successful and abundant I become, the more deeply anchored in my heart and my art and my spirit I am. And the more I honor my authentic, creative, spiritual, and heart-centered approach, the more successful and wealthy I become. So I wove them, and I could feel the sparks, like a broken circuit that had been reconnected. And that's what, and we'll talk about that today, I hope, but that it's a circuit. And wherever there is a broken circuit, there's no circulation. And wherever there's no circulation, there's stagnation. And stagnation equals lack, limitation, etc. But when the circuit is connected, and it's always a circuit that includes seeming opposites, when that circuit gets reconnected, you can have circulation again. The energy is always trying to go through and circulate through you, but it's a broken circuit. So it goes through one part, and then it gets stopped, and then it gets stuck. And then it sparks and pops and it tries to go somewhere else, and it doesn't. That creates all the crises and the challenges you have in that area. Mm. But when you connect it, now it goes from success and wealth and abundance to heart-centered and spirituality and creative. And then that creates more momentum. And then it goes through again, wealth and success and abundance. And now it's got even more energy and right through heart-centered. And now that starts to circulate. And now you have momentum and energy that you before was just broken and sputtering and scattering and creating stagnation. And when I caught that, and again, the more circulation you have, the more life you have, the more growth you have, whether it's in wealth or health or love or creativity. It's the key to all abundance. Besides that fundamental idea, which is that it's already within the seed of your being. There's nothing lacking, nothing missing, and nothing broken. That's the first piece. Mm-hmm. The second piece is you have broken circuits based on your beliefs and stories and experiences. And so this life force that's trying to move through your pattern, your seed, it can't flow through you. It hits these breaks, or what are also called nadis. It hits these breaks and it scatters and it sputters, and it goes flying off to this direction or that direction, creating too much energy in some places, not enough energy in other, because it cannot circulate through these circuits. And again, the circuits are broken based on beliefs and based on your story, based on your cultural upbringing, etc. So when I connected that core circuit, suddenly the energy could circulate. And suddenly my business grew, my creative ability grew, my inspiration grew. And that belief that the more successful and abundant I am, the more spiritual and heart-centered and connected I am. And the more I honor my authentic, creative, spiritual nature, the more wealthy and successful I become. That became my new circuit, which was always the true circuit, which allowed for the seed of my potential to start to flower and flourish and bear fruit. And so that gives you a sense of some of the steps that we go through, like in the Abundance Project. I'm sure I talked about that. So that's really, those are a couple steps, and we can dig deeper into how do how do you understand where these breaks are, or what's behind them, or some of the deeper core principles in creating wealth, like the great reversal, or these different ideas. But the most fundamental thing I first want people to understand is, number one, there is a divine or a perfect pattern of an abundant and successful, fulfilling life, of a true purpose that they've already got. None of their experiences have damaged it or diminished it in any way. The world can never take it away because the world didn't give it to you. And number two, the key to beginning to activate that potential is understanding that everything you need fundamentally is already within you. And so you have to find a way to let it out. As the Gospel of Thomas says, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. So it's all within you. It's a perfect idea, and you have to find a way to start expressing it. And that gets, and I'll say one other couple things, that gets to the idea that whatever is missing in our life, meaning wherever there's lack and limitation instead of abundance, whatever's missing is what we're not giving, what we're not circulating, what we're not generating, because we've been hypnotized and conditioned and have these broken circuits and believe that our solution is outside of us, our power, our source, our security, our support is outside of us. But the truth is, it's all within us. And we have to open out a way, as the poet Robert Browning said, from whence this imprisoned splendor may escape.
The world can't take it away from us because the world didn't give it to us.
Yes.
Okay. That, I just wanted to repeat that. Thank you for starting us off there with what we have is within us, and that inherent sense of worth, value, and just starting us there, and that starting us off with nothing is missing. And so that last part you mentioned, I know that you talk about this in the Abundance Project, is this principle of outside in living.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
And shifting it to the inside out living. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So shifting it to the inside out living. So would you tell us a little bit what you mean by that, and how that reorientation can help us to close some of those circuits that you were describing?
Yeah. I mean, it's maybe one of the biggest broken circuits. It probably the most fundamental broken circuit, which is the idea that, we came here as empty shells and we somehow have to fill ourselves up. Mm-hmm. Right. And that leads to all kinds of things of needing to struggle and strive and prove ourselves and do a lot of things to be worthy and get the degrees and get the jobs and get the people and all the things we're like filling up until we believe eventually I'll have enough and I'll be enough and I can finally just be free and be me and enjoy my life. And, most people die before they get to that point, because there is no point in which you'll ever feel enough. And instead of real fulfillment, it becomes about fulfillment. And again, you're just filling yourself up. And again, look at all the seeds in nature. No seed shows up empty and then starts going out into the forest trying to find all the pieces to build its tree or its flowers. Again, it comes with everything. And this is both a natural principle, it's also a metaphysical and mystical principle. It's what all the great master teachers have taught. Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Mm-hmm. And he said, stop worrying about all that stuff out there, but instead, he said, take no thought for your life, but seek first the kingdom of heaven within, and all those things will be added. Buddha called it nirvana. Lao Tzu called it the Tao. In Hinduism, they called it the Atman or the Brahman. And so whatever you call it, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you call it forth. And when it calls you, you don't let it go to voicemail, where the universe gets the message mailbox full. So it's within you. And all ancient teachings throughout all of history, if we had just gotten that one idea right, that we're not really in the world is in us. It's in our consciousness. And we have everything we need to be all that we were made to be and more than we can imagine. Now, when you begin to understand that, I know you don't feel like that. I know it doesn't always look like that, but neither does a tiny little seed look like that. You don't look at an acorn and go, wow, look at that awesome, mighty 100-foot oak that's creating thousands of more acorns and thousands of more oak trees. You look at it and you go, God, that looks like a pretty good squirrel food, right? Or a cute little thing to put on your desk. So there's literally a universe inside that acorn. And the same is true with us. And again, this is the key mystical message throughout the ages. You are God. You are goddess. You are the source of all creation within you. When it says that you are made in the image and likeness of God, it's saying you have the same creative capacity to create out of seeming nothing everything. Just like the universe, there was nothing and then there was everything. And they still can't figure out because they're trying to look at material and figure out, where did it come from? And you're never going to find it there. So it's all within us. And I call this the great reversal, because when you begin to actually understand this, and there's lots of examples, most of you probably resonate with this when I say this, but you've had those moments, and even scientists have these moments, and they're like, it just came to me, eureka. It came out of the blue. It came from nowhere. I don't have any idea where this idea came from. We've had many of these moments where something came from seeming nothing. When the 90-pound mom lifts a 3,000-pound car off their baby, where did that come from? It certainly didn't come from her body, right? That capacity. Otherwise, she would have just been broken in half by that car, even if she could lift it. Something much deeper than her mere material experience is what was activated. So when we begin to understand that the potential within us is always infinitely greater than whatever problem we face, we can stop telling our little God about our big problems and start telling our little problems about our big God. We can stop being afraid about what we're facing and tell what we're facing it should be afraid of what it's facing, because it's facing God. It's facing infinite creative potential. So there's a mindset shift when you really begin to realize, oh my God, I'm not just this material body, as awesome as it might be. I'm a portal into infinity. I'm an open channel for all of life to flow through according to my unique pattern and purpose, but nevertheless infinitely. And as you start to take that stance, this is the key practical thing. I encourage you just to think about this right now. If you believe, to everybody watching or listening, if you believe this, if you began to take that stand, how would you begin to perceive what's in your life right now? How would you begin to interact with other people? What might you be willing to be or to do or to go for? And one of the biggest things that starts to shift is you stop waiting. You stop waiting for the world to change, right? I love John Mayer, and Waiting on the World to Change is a great song, but it's a bad idea. Waiting on the world to change. No, stop it, John. No waiting on the world to change. We got to be the change, as Gandhi said, right? So we don't wait on our partner to change, our parents to change, our government to change, the conditions to change. We don't wait on anybody to agree with us, validate us, give us what we think we want or need. We are the change we've been waiting for. The question is, how can I live my life authentically and truthfully and abundantly? And the answer is you. And so we have to keep remembering that whatever you're waiting for, you're the one holding it back. You're the one weighing it down. Remember, whatever's missing is what you're not giving, what you're not circulating. So whatever you're waiting for, you're waiting with, and you're weighing it down and you're holding it back. And if you want more to come into your life, you must let more life come out of you. And this is what I call the ultimate weight loss program, right? WAIT, right? And so we have to go, well, if I already had it all. Now, I'm not saying go crazy and go, take out $1 million loan or do something crazy, but there is something that's trying to emerge in all of you right now. There's a conversation you want to have and you would have if you just believed you had instead of didn't have, right? You would start writing that book or start putting your work out there, or start singing your song or start shining your love or whatever it is, if you stopped waiting for something and somebody outside of you to change and recognize that everything you need is within you and you need to be the change. I'll take it back to you.
Well, I want to reiterate that quote. Whatever you're waiting for, you're actually waiting with, and it's weighing you down. It's like, wow, okay, taking that in. And
it's like the Gospel of Thomas quote I said, if you bring forth what's within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. And Brene Brown says, unexpressed creative potential is not benign. It metastasizes. It's cancerous. It's dangerous. Jesus, when he saw the fig tree that wasn't producing figs, he cursed it and it died. When a gardener sees a branch that's not blossoming and bearing fruit, they prune it. So we're the only ones blocking, delaying, denying, and holding ourselves down and holding ourselves back. Not who's president, not the climate, not the governments, not your parents, not your partners. No, we are. And I'm not saying that as a judgment. I'm saying that as an ultimate liberation. We have what we need, but we have to step up, speak up, show up, and start giving forth and circulating the love, the joy, the creativity, the generosity, the service that we want to see and have more of.
And so let's stay with that, because one of the things that you mentioned, whatever you're missing, you're not giving away enough of that thing. That's not your exact words, but
whatever's missing is what you're not giving.
Okay, thank you. Exactly. And so I would love to hear you elaborate on that, because what I really like about the Abundance Project is you provide some very simple action steps for folks around that. And it's something that I find very helpful because, I myself have heard it before. And I can remember, years ago when I was in a place where I kind of relate to this self-improvement journey that you shared that you were on. I resonate with being in that place myself, years ago. And I remember hearing that. It's like, what's missing? You're not giving, or you're not giving enough. And I was like, okay, yeah, great. So I'll give. But it wasn't clear. There wasn't a whole lot of clarity about what that could look like. And then I also thought that, okay, this is something big. Oh, okay, I need to go and start a business. I need to quit my job and start the business. That's what I need to do. But in your book, you really break it down and offer very simple versions of that.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. One little caveat to this is when there's a lot of heart-centered, spiritually inclined, there's a lot of women probably watching, or men that are high in feminine trait, openness. And the reason I say all this is that if you're a woman, or you're highly feminine, or you're highly heart-centered, you probably already give a lot. And hearing the idea that whatever's missing is what you're not giving, or that you have to give more, it can sound like a slap across the face, and it could make you go, if I give any more, I'm going to burn out. That's my problem already. I'm already giving too much. So I want to be very clear and be articulate about what I'm saying. So, and there's in the book, I talk about the seven abundance activators, or the seven, the gifts you give, etc. I say it in different ways, but the idea is that the most important place to start giving is to yourself. Mm-hmm. We often leave ourselves out of that equation. And many of the greatest teachers and the servants and the activists throughout history that are, the Dr. Kings and the Gandhis and the Jesus and the Buddhas, they rarely talk, if ever, about the need to give to yourself. And they do understand it's there in the subtext, but you cannot give what you don't have. This is why we have the whole, when the oxygen mask falls, put it on your face first, not your kid. Because you're trying to put it on your kid first and you pass out and then you both die. So we have to, the principle of the law of circulation, which is foundational to this. Remember, wherever there's circulation, there's green, there's growth. If the water is circulating, you have a lake or an ocean. If you don't, you have a swamp or a dry riverbed where no animals will hang out because there's nothing there for them. If your heart is circulating, you have greater and greater life and greater vitality. If it stops circulating, you start to have a problem. Same with your brain, same with money. In the Great Depression, there was no lack of wealth or resources or food. There was a lack of circulation. People got scared. They stopped investing, stopped innovating, stopped circulating, stopped spending, and the economy had a collective heart attack. So circulation is the key to abundance in every area of your life. If you're in a relationship and it's not growing and deepening with love, someone, and that would be you because you're the person I'm talking to, not just you, but everybody, stopped circulating. You stopped circulating love. You stopped showing up the way you did when you started dating or first, where you were like, you were taking care, you were getting in best shape, you were also calling them up, bringing them flowers, there was all this circulation. And then you hit a threshold, you hit a belief system, you hit the edge of your matrix, and you began to fall into old patterns. And the circulation is what stopped. You stopped dating, you stopped loving, you stopped extending yourself, you stopped taking care of yourself. All these things started happening. You started shadow dancing. And that's what caused the stagnation, the breakdown in that relationship, that job, whatever. Okay. So circulation is key. The law of circulation is you cannot give what you don't have. You have to first have it. But you cannot keep what you don't give away. And finally, you cannot sustain what you don't receive again. Now, what do we know that does that? It's called breathing, right? Try breathing out without breathing in and see how long you last. Try just breathing in and not breathing out. I'm going to hold on to my air because you never know. There may not be enough later and you're dead or you pass out, right? Try breathing in and breathing out, but then not receiving the breath that wants to give it back to you. You need all three steps in circulation. So that's why the giving process is about circulation, and it must include giving to yourself. Okay. So the key, I won't go through all of them because I know we're running out of time, but there's giving out, giving up, giving in, giving thanks, forgiving, giving to yourself. Those are just a few of them. These are the gifts that give you everything, the abundance activators. And the giving out is about your time, talent, and treasure. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about that. Time is putting your time towards what truly matters and to people that truly matters, not when you have the time, because that's where we stop circulating. We're like, well, I don't have the time, or I'm going to wait for the time. But if you have the impulse and the desire to give of your time to something for you or for others or for something you care about, that's telling you it wants to emerge now. And if you say, sorry, I'm busy, you just said no to your yes, you just broke the circuit, you just stopped the circulation, and you just started stagnation.
I love this one because I really feel that the effects of this practice of giving out are really directly observable if you're really present and paying attention. And I want to just offer an example of how this can be so small.
Yes.
And there was a time when I was without a car and I was taking public transit. And so, um, you know, being on the bus and then seeing a mom get on with a small child, all the seats are full, having that impulse of, oh, well, maybe they would like this seat. It's just a small impulse, but it can easily, or maybe it's not a mom with a small child. Maybe it's just someone who looks like they've had a long day at work, right? Okay, maybe a mom with a small child, a lot of people give up their seat. But maybe someone gets on, it looks like they're pretty tired. And it's like, well, I like sitting down. It's easy for me to read, my little book on my phone if I'm sitting down. And it's like just following that impulse to get up and give someone the seat. Like it can be very, very small, but it reminds me of what you're talking about because there's little ways that it can be practiced. It's just feeling that
Absolutely.
impulse and then following it to give.
Absolutely.
Give.
Absolutely. It's about just opening the tap and
Right.
starting the drip,
Yeah.
right? And it's not about looking for a result.
Right.
Remember, the demonstration of abundance is not how much comes to you, but how much comes from you and through you. That's how you know you're living. That's how you know you're a spiritual baller, is when you are able to generously give to yourself and to others, and to express your time, talent, and treasure, to express love and generosity and service and creativity and blessings. And you're just flowing. And what you'll notice is you start to get access to the deeper treasures and talents and abilities. You get inspired. And suddenly you find you fall into the flow of synchronicity, and you meet and opportunities unfold. And like, where would that person come from? Where did that opportunity come from? Where did all those ideas come from? They came from the flow when you are in circulation. And by the way, currency, which we say is money, comes from the root of current, which means flow. To be affluent means to be rich, which comes from a root to flow into, right? It's all the same metaphor. It's all the same idea. There is a flow. Life is not withholding, blocking, delaying, or denying anything. God, life, love is giving of itself totally and completely at every point in the universe. It's giving of itself as you. It's saying, let me in and let me out. Mm-hmm. Let me. If you prove me now in this, I will open up the windows of heaven and pour forth a blessing too big for you to receive. Life is like, kid, do you know what you got? It's like an inheritance. And we're like, well, I got to do it on my own, or I got to wait for something. And so there's all of this life just locked up inside of our divine trust account. But we have to trust in our trust account in order to unlock it.
And I love how you said too, not having an agenda behind what you're giving either.
Except to unlock the infinite, to release the imprisoned splendor, to discover how much we have and how much we can be and how much we can, that's the agenda, because that's the only agenda life has. And I'll give you a couple other examples. Well, first of all, that example about the bus is a beautiful one because there's a story I used to tell called The Smile That Saved a Child's Life. Mm-hmm. And there was an example of a woman on a bus where there was a person who, like many people, we especially in the public, you kind of shut yourself down. You don't really open yourself to other people. It's not safe. You don't want to deal with it, blah, blah, blah. Or you're just tired and exhausted and you don't have the energy. And she met this one individual. And this individual, she could tell, was really struggling and kind of closed off. And she did something. I don't know if she gave them a seat or something, but then she smiled, really just decided to be generous with her heart and smiled at this individual. And this individual was really moved felt seen, like nobody else cared. And this individual went to work that day because this person followed up on all this. And they had a boss who was, everybody hated the boss, who's kind of the workaholic or the strict guy, whatever. And this person, having felt blessed or felt, you ever had that experience where suddenly somebody looks at you and you feel seen and you just kind of you just kind of radiate after. You're like, wow, maybe there is hope in the world. And this person decided to give their boss a similar moment of like thanking them for something, telling them how much they appreciate. Nobody ever did that to the boss. Like, and they gave this boss this act of generosity, of gratitude,
Right.
which is another one, right? Giving, being grateful. And the boss was so touched. The boss went home that night. This is where the story gets really interesting. The boss had a very estranged relationship with his son. This one always gets me choked up. And the boss was this guy decided tonight he was going to actually try to connect with his son, see how this flow can increase. And he went into his son's room and he just opened the door and knocked. He said, hey kid, I don't know what his name was. I'm making some dinner. Would you like some? And if you want to talk, I can never tell the story without crying. And then a few minutes later, the kid came out of the room and he had a gun and he was going to kill himself. And he didn't. And the relationship, was transformed with his dad. But literally that smile on the bus saved that child's life. And so, you may not always see the fruits of your actions come back to you immediately. But believe me when I tell you that when you have the courage to live like the divine life that you really are, to be generous with yourself, I have to keep saying that, fill yourself up, love yourself up, talk to yourself the way you want to be talked to, treat yourself the way you want to be treated. The golden rule is love your neighbor as yourself, but the platinum rule is love yourself the way you want your neighbor to, right? Love yourself and then extend that love to your neighbor. And again, that love could be in the form of a smile, a hello, and opening the door. It could also be in the form of picking up some trash. It could be in the form of sharing your message with the world just on an Instagram post, something simple. It's not about being a superstar and an Instagram influencer. It could be about reaching out, making a call. Like you said, find those ways. It could be about you just sitting down and beginning to take time to figure out who you really are and what you really want to be. These are all acts of generosity, of self-love, of love, to open out a way for this imprisoned splendor to begin to escape, to begin to circulate. The whole kingdom of heaven, the whole of nirvana, the whole of paradise, everything the world is waiting for, that you're waiting for, is within you. So it's not going to come to us. We have to open out a way to let it come from us and through us. And this is, of course, what I go to in depth in the book, The Abundance Project. And yes, it will pay your rent. And it's connected to your health and well-being, because when circulation happens, in general, your body is an outpicturing of your mind. Your body is your mind in solidity. Your mind is your body in liquidity. So when the circulation happens in your mind and in your consciousness, there's a correspondent circulation in your body, and then in your body of affairs, relationships start to open up. Love starts to open up. I'm telling you, I've been through, my story, from tragic loss in variety of things and challenges in families to a level of love and community and inspiration and opportunity and wealth and abundance like I never knew was possible, even in the midst of terrible and difficult conditions, terrible jobs, COVID, the loss of my child, all these terrible things. When I practiced this, I not only healed through it and grew through it, but I became a bigger channel of life and abundance and love as a result of it, so that my life has more love, not less, more abundance, not less. And this is what's possible for everybody. This is what is our true destiny.
And, when I was on the bus, I considered it misfortune at first because I had lost my car.
Yes.
And then the actual experience of being on public transit ended up being transformative in a number of ways when I was going through that. But specifically in that example of, giving up a seat, what I was reminded of, what I received in that moment was a reminder of, oh, I still have my health and my energy. I can easily stand up, on this bus. And for someone else, that, like, just like how much I still have. And that's what I was reminded of. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much more I could lose. And when I'm focused on this, this is bad luck, I'm focused on what I don't have. And instead it just shifts to like, oh, wow, here's what I still have. Wow, this is so much. And it's really transformative. So I'm just, it gives me the chills to talk about this because this has had such a significant impact on my life. And what you brought added to it today is this idea of the circulation. And it's like you described this smile. And it's like, whoa, it tied into this effect that like closed the circuit for like other people too.
Exactly.
And it's like,
that's exactly right.
Family, that's close it. You never know. And even when you were describing the acorn and you were like, you don't think about an apple pie. And it's like, oh, I've never thought about, well, okay, I'm conflating the images now. An apple seed.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm getting the images mixed up. Anyway, so it's like, oh, this is not just a tree. This is like someone's Christmas with their family and how meaningful that is. Like,
so now you're starting to tap into the deeper truth. Yes,
I should I never want to miss an opportunity for that. So
yes,
and I know, man, because we are running out of time here, but and so I want to definitely encourage folks to definitely check out the Abundance Project, because as you could tell from hearing Derek speak, he's just wonderful with metaphor. He's an excellent writer. He really helps simplify these kind of complex topics into really like digestible format, like we experienced here today. And what I love is that, we started off saying, oh, this is about financial health and wealth. And instead of some complex strategy, what I feel like you really offered us here today is a more internal practice that's something we can do immediately, that immediately has benefit on us absolutely today. And
it's an external practice. It's internal and very practical. And I've made millions of dollars before I knew anything about financial health, or finances, or I didn't know what the heck I was doing. But what I did know was these principles, and what I did do was practice them and live them, right? When Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount, talking about how the birds don't have to store in barns, but they have all this abundance, he was basically saying, you don't need to have a 401k. You don't need to know financial strategies to have all the wealth and abundance necessarily. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, by the way. And I do now, and I have been a student of finances now and investing and all that. But the most fundamental and foundational, even if you study the richest, most successful, wealthy people, you will see that they have these foundations. Elon Musk didn't become the richest man in the world by holding on and hoarding. He was willing to put everything he had into the vision. He circulated everything to the point of having nothing. And now is the richest man in the world. Walt Disney, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Oprah Winfrey, Tom, over and over and over again, you'll see examples of this. So I just want people to be clear. This is the true foundation of financial health and abundance and success, but it allows you to create an abundant framework for every area of your life.
Thank you so much, Derek.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. And so how can people find out more about you and your work?
Well, they certainly can grab the book, The Abundance Project, on Amazon or wherever they buy books. That's probably the easiest, or Barnes and Nobles or whatever. They can also check out my podcast, Emergence. There's dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of podcasts where I go in depth in these principles. And of course, they can go to my website, DerekRydell.com, DerekRydall.com. And there's tons of free trainings. I give away most of my stuff. That's another principle, but that's for a second talk. Okay. But I never lack in what I get in return. but they can go to my site and get a lot of free trainings as well.
So lovely. I'm already looking forward to the next conversation with you because,
Likewise.
I mean, that's just what's really needed. It's clear. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, my dear. It's my pleasure and honor. I just think you're awesome. I think you're a superstar. Everybody should keep following you and paying attention to what you're up to because you're doing it.
My goodness. Okay. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Derek. Thank you. Okay, taking it in because I have to receive. That. Okay.
Exactly. Remember?
Yeah.
Have, give, receive.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Much love to you and to everybody.